Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to Serenity OS office hours. Let's see if it works. I am just by myself today, but I'm streaming from StreamYard instead of via YouTube, so it's a little bit weird. But we're going to do what we always do and wait for somebody to acknowledge that they can hear me and see me. And then my heart can calm down. Let's see, a bunch of people already here. Hello, Lonely. Hello, MovX. Hello, Writer Hitchhike. All right, Salvo says "ack." I'm gonna take that as a sign. Okay. Right. So now we can't actually see the comments unless I do this. So I do have to do that. All right. Yes. Thank you for all the acknowledgments. Great. Firefox says, "Great to see you mirrored." Oh. Am I mirrored? Wait, can I switch that? Oh, look at that. Yeah, that's more like it. Okay. So we are back. It's Friday, so we're going to do what we always do at SerenityOS office hours, where we take random questions about SerenityOS or any of the adjacent projects and topics. So if you want to talk about the Yak language or the recent thing I hacked on, which was the Ladybird web browser, that's fine too, or just programming stuff. Let's see. Firefox says, "I guess it's switched for you, not for us." Oh no. I guess it did switch for me. Okay. Well, I'm just gonna unswitch it so I can see what you see. I look so weird mirrored, but okay. That's fine. So right. So basically, let's see what we can do here in this platform. I do want to get used to this platform because it is really fancy. And I like the features. Like I like that I can do stuff like yoink to bring up Serenity in a window like this. It's pretty cool. And it is generally sweet to have something like this that allows me to invite people and so on. So that's why I'm going to learn it. Anyway, I guess I do want to show you something. Let me see. I can only share one window at a time, so just bear with me here. Andrew says, "No guest today." No guest indeed. No guest indeed. We had guests twice in a row, and just wanted to get back to the usual pace, and then I'm going to try to get new guests in the future again. Matrix says, "Will Ladybird development continue, or was it more proof of concept?" It absolutely continues, but the shape it will take is unclear. As I mentioned in the video while hacking on it, it was sort of proof of concept initially, but if it goes well, then I would like to integrate it into the SerenityOS code base so that it doesn't live in its own place, because then it would very easily get out of sync with the web browser engine and the JavaScript engine and all that stuff. So definitely continues. And a bunch of people have already made pull requests to it that have been integrated, and I've added a bunch of features to it. Maybe I should just show you those actually. Let me just figure out how to do that right quick. So if I just open it up, I guess, and then I should be able to share it. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so now it also has, you can't see the debug menu for whatever reason, I guess because it's its own window. That's kind of goofy. But it has a debug menu with most of the same options as the debug menu in the SerenityOS browser. And there was a pull request from, I forget their name, but somebody added tabs, so we can now make multiple tabs. We also have some like basic back forward stuff, and it's just development is continuing, even though it's still very like experimental and unclear what the path forward is. I think from my personal side, I just want to explore the concept a little bit more and see how it feels using Qt as a sort of GUI layer, because I'm not like completely convinced that is the permanent way forward for a cross-platform browser, although there are some pretty good arguments for it, and I will show you one of those right now if I can just switch what I'm sharing. Okay. And here we go. Look at this, Ladybird browser on Haiku. That was posted like an hour ago. And how cool is that, right? So somebody named Gerasim already got it up and running on Haiku, which I guess means that the engine has to be pretty portable. And the fact that we're using Qt means that they can just use the Qt port on Haiku to get the whole thing working there. So that is really sweet. Shamtown84 says, I loved your Linux browser hacking video. It's so inspiring to see the result of great engineering enabling such quick ports. Yes, I would totally agree with that. And I think the fact that it was so easy to stand up a little browser shell on Linux is a testament to the fantastic work done by the whole community on libweb and libjs and all the adjacent or all the sort of supporting libraries. Special shout out to Dex, who did the brunt of the dirty work on porting the engine to Linux. Let's see. Tim says, immediate disappointment. I guess that was in reference to the guestlessness, but it's going to be okay, Tim. Let's see. Okay, I'm just going to default to having... Can I default to having Serenity just up and running if I get that in a window here? All right. Yeah, that feels a bit more cozy. All right. Cafe says, what is my favorite color? I'm going to go ahead and say red. I think red is my favorite color. Phoenix Firewings says, what is the name of the platform you're using? I got here, you're saying the NAMs? Well, the NAMs of the platform I'm using for streaming is called StreamYard. So it is, I guess I'll type it here. We'll see if it loads in the Serenity browser. StreamYard.com. I have a feeling that's not going to look super beautiful. But yeah, this is the thing. So it allows you to do like co-op streams with other people, and everybody only needs a web browser. So that's really, really handy. Okay. Let's see. Adler says, have you secretly created a SerenityOS app using Yak? No, I haven't, but maybe somebody did. I think we've toyed with some command line utility ports, but nobody has actually done a GUI library using app, at least. But it's inevitable. It's going to happen. I think one of the big things. Oh, dang it! One of the big things in the way of GUI apps is that we don't have any way to express closures at the moment in Yacht, which makes it rough to do any kind of interaction, because the Serenity GUI libraries are very big on like, oh, when this happens, execute this callback, and you want to be able to create those callbacks and pass them to Libgui, but Yak currently doesn't have a way to express closures, so we can't set that type of thing up. But progress on, I guess, feature completeness and the self-hosted compiler is racing towards the finish line at the moment. I think we're well above 75% pass rate on the unit tests. So it should be motoring forward pretty nicely. And then we'll open up for new feature work. So that will definitely include closures. So we'll see how that goes. Vineet says, possible to have a Windows port of Ladybird. It's entirely possible. It will probably be a bit more involved than Linux or Haiku, because Windows is not just like a straight line Unix or POSIX compatible system in the same way. I mean, I know they have compatibility layers, and certainly if you were to use Windows subsystem for Linux, you could probably get it up. But getting a sort of mainline Windows port working is definitely going to take some work. Let's see. Andrew says it's not currently possible because the Serenity libraries are very, very POSIX. This is accurate. Yes, we would need to basically write Windows backends for a bunch of functionality. And that's also something that I'm investigating a little bit with Ladybird, where I swapped out the Serenity network request handling stack for a Qt-based network handling stack, really just to fix crashes at the moment. But it is interesting to see that, like, okay, well, if we define sort of a good integration point API, then you could potentially have sort of seamless integration or near seamless integration with other libraries. If anybody wants to port the engine to a system where we can't run the Serenity standard network stack, for example, like Windows. Ryder Hitchhike says, okay, I'm back. What did I miss? You missed many things, but you're not going to miss what's happening next. So welcome back. Damikiller37 says, the more the merrier, hey? I think that's generally true in most situations. I can't think of an obvious case where I disagree with that, but of course there are counter arguments. But shout outs to Damikiller, by the way, because Damikiller recently has been making these timestamps for the monthly update videos, and that's so awesome. I really appreciate that. So whenever I see a comment from Damikiller, it has a bunch of timestamps, I just rush to put them into the video. And it's really, really appreciated, really, really increasing the quality of life, I guess, for the people watching the videos. I never do that. I haven't been doing them myself because by the time I'm uploading the video, I'm so tired from making the video all day, and I just want to go to sleep. So very, very much appreciate that, Damikiller. Let's see. German WTB says, what are your thoughts on the libgraphics rendering model? Currently, it is sequential drawing, which is somewhat inefficient by drawing over the same pixel multiple times. Maybe a scene graphy thing. Right. So libgraphics is very much a sort of standard 2D rasterizer rendering model. And it works pretty well for stuff like two-dimensional GUIs, like the one we have in Serenity. It seems to me like it would be weirdly overkill to try to express our UI as a scene graph instead of the way that we do now. But at the same time, maybe I'm just stuck in old thinking. I haven't actually tried to prototype that, so I don't know how it would look. But I will say that overdraw is less of a problem. At least what we're currently doing is not exhibiting any particular like pathological problems with overdraw. And in the cases where it does matter, well, we do have tools to debug and improve. So I don't know. I guess I would like to solve problems that are real and measurable before solving theoretical problems like overdraw. If we have a real problem with overdraw, then we should look at that. That said, I'm absolutely not against having a sort of a scene graph type thing, a tool in our toolkit. It would be a very good thing to have, and there are absolutely things that we would want to show on screen that are better expressed in a scene graph. And a good example of that is our web browser, because web content is like typically like this long flowing thing, vertical flowing thing, right? And it would be cool if that would just be something that slides up and down in a scene space instead of being something that we blit out pixel by pixel. But that is unexplored territory in Serenity so far. Wicked Energy says, does Serenity have a tiling window option? Well, we do have this feature that lets you drag windows to the edge of the screen to create like pleasant tile shapes. And I think there's also keybind for it. Yeah, like window up, window, or window left, window right, stuff like that. But there isn't like a traditional tiling window manager features. Mostly because nobody proposed anything in that area that looked nice. Firefox 317 says, regarding Ladybird, I tried to get the out-of-process web view architecture working. Turns out our IPC system doesn't work on Linux yet. Yeah, that's the problem. So that's something that would be really, really good to get working, obviously, even if it means that we have to adapt it. So if we look here on Serenity, if I can, yeah, here we go. Obviously, our browser is a multi-process thing. So let me sort by PID. We can see that after launching the browser, we also got a bunch of helpers like request server, web content, WebSocket, and so on. Actually, 2 request servers for whatever reason. And these helper processes currently in Ladybird, they're all just part of the browser process. So getting something working on other platforms where the Ladybird is able to launch other processes is going to be great. But as you've noticed, Firefox, that's probably going to take a little bit more work. So happy to talk about that work, though, either here, or we can also talk about it on Discord later. Might be better, so we can get into the details. Jack Delahunt says, what languages did you try before making Yacht, and why didn't you pick them ones? So I tried a long list of languages. The ones I spent the most time with were Rust and Swift, but I also tried a whole bunch of others. And this, I think we've talked about this many, many times, but basically the reason that I didn't pick them, which was also in the blog post, is that they were not a perfect fit for Serenity. Every language that we looked at had a lot of great things about it, but none of them were really ideal for expressing the type of code that we mostly have in Serenity, which is a desktop graphical desktop operating system code with lots of traditional UI. And I would say both Rust and Swift were very good candidates, but in Rust's case, the lack of object-oriented support, like object-oriented programming support, made implementing stuff, especially browser stuff, just really, really cumbersome. And if you look at the existing set of Rust GUI libraries, you'll notice that there's a large gap where languages typically have mature GUI libraries. I think because people are still figuring out how they want to do GUI programs with Rust, and I don't want to wait for people to figure that out, and I just want to start making GUI programs. So for that, Rust was not the right choice. And Swift is much nicer when it comes to object-oriented programming and building GUIs, but it's also unfortunately really tied down to the Apple environment. So like in order to get Swift running on your platform, you also have to bring over libdispatch, which is the Grand Central Dispatch stuff that macOS and iOS uses. You have to have that because Swift assumes that you have that. And you also need to bring over the Foundation library and probably some other stuff as well. And that really didn't seem like the right path for Serenity either, because we're a system where we make everything ourselves, and now we're looking at bringing in another language. So should we really bring in a language that also brings in like a huge runtime library with like all of this code from another operating system? That didn't seem right. So for that reason, Swift was kind of ruled out. And at the end of the day, as I was just saying, Serenity is a project where we make everything ourselves. And when you say that out loud, you realize that we should probably just make the language ourselves as well. So that's what we're trying to do now. I hope that answers your question. Let's see. Rita says, hey, Andreas, as a project for this summer, I'm going to build, trying, I guess, a JavaScript engine from scratch for fun. Do you have like a playlist of your process while building of the engine? So I have a playlist called Browser Hacking. And I'm pretty sure in there at some point, there's a video where I started making the JavaScript engine. I don't know, like knowing what I know today, I don't know if I would approach it in exactly the same way, because now I have a much better idea of how to architect the engine. But it might still be educational just to see like what approach you can take when you don't know where to start and you just want to get started somehow. So I will send you the link if I can just Google it up here on Bing. Okay, I'm going to type it in the chat. Oh my goodness, that's a very big link. I don't want that link to be that big. Okay. Oh. All right. Just doing okay with the tools here, I hope. Let's see. Phoenix Firewing says, are you going to make a build system like CMake for Yacht? I have no idea. Shamtown84 says, if a nameless power came down tomorrow from another dimension and finished Serenity, what would you do on Sunday? You know, I guess now that, I guess, does that include the Yacht language and also the, like bringing the browser to other platforms? Let's assume that it does, so that I can't just cheat my way out by working on those. If somebody actually finished everything, I guess I would just doodle around for a while until the world invents new use cases and new things that you might want to do with your computer. If you look at the web platform, if you wait about a year, you'll have just a boatload of new features to implement, and new websites and use cases will come up that you have to support. So I think even if somebody magically finished everything I would like to see in Serenity, it won't take long before the use case sort of new use cases pop up that we have to implement. And that's part of what I love about Serenity. It's like a perpetual entertainment machine for myself. A Brecha says, have you considered also streaming this on Twitch? There's another large community out there who might be interested in Serenity. So far, I feel like we're doing fine just streaming on YouTube. And I looked briefly at the Twitch rules, and I'm not clear if it's actually possible to stream to like multiple places, because I think in the Twitch rules, it says something like anything that you stream on Twitch must not be made available on other platforms until a certain time period has passed. So like if I were to stream this on Twitch, I would have to then hide the recording on YouTube for a couple of days and then like unlock it, because you should only be able to watch it on Twitch. All of that stuff just sounded like a hassle. So I haven't been considering it seriously, but maybe I'm misunderstanding something. Let's see. Barbecue says, wouldn't it make sense to make a libgui/Qt wrapper? Also, wait, what's happening here in the background? Something is just clicking. Wouldn't it make sense to make a libgui/Qt wrapper? That way, there wouldn't be a need for a Qt browser, but rather the Serenity browser would become usable on Linux. So maybe, but that's like significantly more work than you might think. Libgui is not a one-to-one mapping for Qt, so creating a translation layer would be pretty involved. And I think at this stage, I mean, I'm still just prototyping something. So we'll see what we make. I would love it if we could get Libgui running on other platforms. Of course, that would be very pleasant, but I don't know if that is like, I don't know if that would be less work or more work or better or worse or what than doing Qt or Qt translation. With everything like this, I prefer to look at prototypes. So if anybody has some good idea for how to make these things, then please make a prototype and let's look at it. The literal definition of bruh says, do you have any tips or ideas for someone building a UI library/toolkit? Do I have? I guess start with a very specific use case in mind and work your way towards that as soon as possible so that you can actually start using your thing immediately. I think one issue that a lot of people run into when they are not familiar with making frameworks and they try to make their first framework of any kind is that they try to sort of design and architect everything perfectly before putting it to use. And it really seems to me that something like a GUI framework, you want usage to guide the design. You don't want to sort of ivory tower design something and then hope that it's actually nice to use. And that's certainly how we've approached the GUI framework in Serenity, where we just built the whole thing organically. Just started with something and slapped together a couple of applications and just iterated as we discovered pain points and things that we liked and so on. So my tip is to just get something that you can start using as soon as possible and start using it, and then take advantage of that to sort of guide the continued design of your toolkit. Phoenix Firewing says, Andrew, Windows does support a form of POSIX sockets. It's called WinSockets. Yoki dokie. Kushashwa says, hey, Andrew, thank you for everything. Just curious, would you ever like to do about your system setup, your OS, window manager, etc.? Also thoughts on Wayland versus X11. So I assume you're speaking to me. My name is Andreas, but I will happily go by Andrew for this moment. So I guess you're asking if I would make a video about my setup. I don't think I would necessarily make something like that. It's not really interesting, I guess. I think my setup is very, very boring. It's just a standard Ubuntu Mate install. And there isn't anything special about it. I think people tend to overestimate the importance of tweaking your Linux desktop setup so that it's somehow better or whatever. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. As long as you can use the tools that you want to use, it doesn't matter what distribution you're using, what window manager you're using. Like, just install something that you like the way it looks and you can tolerate using, and you'll be fine. Also, thoughts on Wayland versus X11. No strong feelings one way or the other. I'll just use whatever is the default on my Ubuntu machine. Oh, and then Kushashva immediately corrected himself. So thank you. Let's see. Lucas Lucas says, I'm currently writing about compiling to LLVM IR for my bachelor's thesis. So I'll be ready to contribute when Yak moves to LLVM IR instead of C++. Well. That is cool. But who knows? Maybe we will move directly to our own IR, SIR, or JIR, or whatever IR. I don't know. When I look, I mean, I understand that the LLVM is a beautiful machine, right? And it's a complex, powerful machine that can produce excellent optimized programs. But when I look at the time trace output of Clang, I just see it spending so much time generating executables that I can't help but think that there has to be an easier and better way to just do what I do 99% of the time, which is generate like a temporary executable that I'm going to use for debugging for a couple of minutes before I compile again and generate a new executable. I don't know why that has to take as long as it does. And the reason I say this in this context is I noticed that the LLVM backend, like for example, when we're building the Yak self-hosted compiler at the moment on my pretty decent machine here. I mean, I know it's 2 years old at this point, but it spends like 6 seconds or something like that, just lowering the IR to assembly code, and with all optimizations turned off. I feel like there's just something that's a little bit bad about that, or like a little bit too much. And I don't mean to complain about LLVM, because I think LLVM has very different priorities. I think most compilers, they want to get really good at producing very optimized programs and like full of useful debug info and whatever. But it just seems to me that the use case of fast iteration compiles is not a priority in the LLVM IR space. And if you look at a project like Zig, they take this very seriously, and they are showing some very interesting numbers that come out of focusing on that instead. So I don't know. I'm curious to see what approach we might be taking with that down the line. But right now, it's too early to tell. Anyways. Let's see. German WTB says, well, the IPC system is only somewhat tentatively working on Serenity either in regards to Inspector. Well, there are certainly issues everywhere in the system, but Inspector is like a very awkward, unusual IPC setup in the first place. So it has like this non-standard model where people call in from 2 locations to it, and then it's not set up in the same way where you have like a straight client server like every other user of IPC. But it's true, there are issues with the IPC system. Adler says, people seem to like your YouTube content a lot, me included. Have you thought about streaming work sessions? Thank you for saying that, Adler. I appreciate that. So I thought many times about streaming my work sessions, and the reason that I don't do it is basically because I want them to be hyper-focused. If you notice, when I'm working on something in a video, I just stay focused the whole time. Don't let myself get distracted, and I find that it's a very, very nice space for me to go into. I really like it. And if there would be a chat with people to interact with, I don't think I would be even 30% as productive as I can be with no distractions. So maybe it would be like a separate thing sometime, but I don't feel like giving up that focus that I get from recording instead. Sophia says, I love the name Ladybird, by the way. It reminds me of the Mozilla Firebird days. Yes, that was definitely part of why I liked it too. So Ladybird is like a British English word for ladybug, but and I was looking for some ladybug related word, obviously, because of our ladybird imagery that we have around Serenity. But I loved Ladybird because, as you say, like Mozilla Firebird was the original, or one of the original names of what is today Firefox. I think they were made to change it because of the Firebird database engine or something like that. So they became Firefox, but I don't think there's a Ladybird database engine. So I guess let's consider it a little homage to Firebird. Let's see. Oh, I'm so far behind. Let me try to catch up here. Morton says, how much would be needed to get WebView and probably libjs plus other supporting libraries to compile in Xcode with Apple Clang? I have no idea. I don't know, but I feel like it might not be that much work. I've seen people on Discord talking about getting a Mac build up and going. And I've even seen a screenshot somewhere of Ladybird running on Mac OS, although it wasn't loading any pages. But if the best way to figure this out is to join our Discord server and see if you can find the people, probably in the browser channel, the people using Mac, and you can just talk to them, find out where they're at. But I don't think that there's a lot of work required. Might just be some little fixes. Dumb Guy says, hi, Andreas. I'm sold on the error or pattern instead of using exceptions. But what's the way you deal with failures within a constructor that prevent you from creating the requested object? Aha. So what we do, let me see. Can we get a slightly bigger type here? So what we do is typically we make a separate function. So we can't fail from a constructor, right? So we would just make something like the object that I want, create object. And if we need to fail in the constructor, we instead fail in this function here. And then at the end of it, we return the object. So maybe like object initialize somehow. If that fails, then return error. I haven't programmed in C++ normally for a hot minute, so this is a little unfamiliar, but failed. So in general, that's sort of the approach that we take. Of course, it doesn't necessarily look exactly like this, but the basic idea is instead of having a constructor, we just make a factory function that can handle all the failure conditions before actually giving you the object. And this would probably be within the object class so that it can instantiate, and then you would make this constructor private so that the outside world can't do this. But yeah, factory function pattern, basically, for anything that needs to be able to fail. Kushashwa says, for Serenity, does it support all resolutions and multiple monitors? I understand that it started as a fun project, but how do you plan other hardware companies starting to support Serenity? Well, I don't really have a plan, if you can believe it. And I think if somebody wanted to explicitly support Serenity, there isn't even like a clear path for what they would do other than, I guess, support all of the relevant standards. But to your question, we do support whatever resolutions are advertised by your monitor via the EDID information. We will just let you set them. And we also support multi-monitors. As you can see here, this is monitor 1, but you can have an arbitrary set of monitors. And Tom did a lot of work on multi-monitor. I think that was over a year ago now. So that's It's not something that I test regularly because I only ever run the one monitor for Serenity, but we do support it. Krister says, has any progress been made to Ladybird since your port video? Do you want to showcase it? Yeah, so we already looked at it a little bit earlier. And there hasn't been any like radical changes other than tabs. We have tabs, and let me go ahead and bring up Ladybird instead. Yeah, we have tabs and back, forward, reload and home buttons. And there's also a debug menu, which my streaming service does not understand that the menu belongs to the window, so you can't see it when I open it, but it has the same debug entries as the SerenityOS browser. So basically just like a bunch of quality of life features coming in. And this is very much still in the prototype stage. And let's load something like OS News. I always used to read OS News back like in the late 2000s. It looked a bit different back then, but it's a good website. Anyway, so there are obviously a bunch of issues with Ladybird, like both in the engine and in Ladybird itself. Like it currently has a very hacked single process model, and we want to split it up into multiple processes like we talked about earlier here. I guess the main architectural change since I did the video is that network requests now go through Qt instead of going through our HTTP and TLS stack. And I did that because there's a problem in the Serenity networking stack that it does a blocking connect when opening a TLS connection to a web server. And because of that blocking connect, we end up like nesting Qt event loops, and that causes crashes. And that was no bueno. And eventually we want to use our own network stack, obviously, so that we can test it. But at the moment, I just wanted access to more web content in Ladybird, so I just made a quick plugin to use Qt networking to do HTTP and HTTPS loads, and that is the big architectural change, really. Andrew accurately says that Kushashwa, we don't make plans here. Yeah, indeed. So Graham says, hey, Andreas, I was wondering something about File Manager. When renaming a file, if you can highlight the part of the text you want to keep and delete everything else on either side. Ooh, interesting. This is not as seamless as it could be, but where's QEMU? Here it is. Okay, so in File Manager, when renaming a file, if you can highlight the part of the text you want to keep and delete everything else on either side. So what does that mean? Like you would select this part here and then delete everything else on either side with like a key combo or something? Is there normally a key combo for that? I don't think that's not an action I'm familiar with from any particular system paradigm or whatever. I mean, you could definitely implement that. Maybe I don't understand what the use case is really. I guess you wanted like, wait, can't use delete when I'm here editing. Oh, that's so stupid. Oh, we have a bug. So if I bring up the editor, also, the editor just looks weird. We used to show like a little box around it. I guess it's okay that we don't. Okay, so many bugs here I'm noticing. If I press home and end, then the text scrolls. That's pretty ugly. If I select some text, I press delete, and it tries to delete the file. That's not right. I just want to delete the text I've selected. And then, yeah, for your question, I don't know. How would that normally work? Can you make a prototype and then we can look at it? Ullman says, when will Yak be ready for production use? Who knows? I don't know. I don't have a plan. We'll find out. We'll find out when we do, I guess. Stefan B says, hi, Andreas. I just wanted to say that I had a couple of interviews recently, and appears that mentioning that I'm subscribed to your channel actually made me pass them. So thank you. Wow. That's quite something. So that's awesome. I like that, I guess. I don't know what this emotion is that I'm feeling, but it's a good one. So thank you for sharing that, Stefan, and congratulations on passing your interview. If it was an interview for a job, then congrats on the job, I guess. Very, very cool. So you heard it here first. The secret to getting a job in 2022, mention that you are subscribed to me on YouTube. Let's see. Mamar says, I've been following this project for a while, and this is the first time I get to catch the live stream. Great project. Thank you, Mamar. I appreciate that you say that. And welcome to the stream. Let's see. Phoenix Firewing says, imagine SerenityOS desktop on top of a Linux kernel. It would be cool. Serenity Linux LOL. Well, you could say that, I guess. Ryder Hitchhike says, really need idea guy here. Yeah. Idea guy is a fantastic emote. It's basically, it's one of our Discord emotes. If you're not on our Discord, you're not familiar. It's an emote that has basically a thinking guy, and then he has these light bulbs going off over his head. It's just full of ideas. That is the stuff. Let's see. Oh, and now I'm just catching up to people commenting on the LLVM IR stuff I was saying. B. Freddle says, Zig compiler with LLVM backend has the same time trace. 95 to 98% of time is spent in LLVM, even for debug build. Right. This is unfortunate. But it is very, very cool what the Zig folks are doing, and like trying to push the boundary or push the envelope and see what's really possible with fast code generation. I'm really happy that that work is happening, and it's just something to keep an eye on, I think. Let's see. Andrew, in reference to building on Mac, was saying to Morton, in order to compile Serenity libraries with Apple Clang, you need a version that supports C++ 20. So at least Apple Clang 14. That might only be the latest snapshot, and the latest release can do it. Okay. Yes. Yeah, Apple Clang is always a bit of a hassle because it's not exactly the same as mainline Clang, so you have to keep an eye out for the differences. Kushashwa says, quite surprised that you were able to pronounce my name, by the way. Also, you're an inspiration for many, including me. Well, thanks for saying that, and I'm glad I was able to pronounce your name. I'm just doing the best I can with with everybody's name. I really hope that I don't say anyone's name offensively wrong. Of course, feel free to correct me if I do. I know it's difficult to communicate in text how to say something, but it is something that we could probably have better tools for that somehow. Now that I think about it, like it's strange that like so often you see somebody's name and you're not sure how to pronounce it. Like why isn't there a tool in my UI that informs me about pronunciation? Now I'm idea guying. Let's see. Thomas says Clang generates extremely naive LLVM IR. They're introducing a mid-level Clang IR to sit between the front end and LLVM IR. Yeah, I heard something about that. I don't remember who was talking about it. Was Chris Ladner talking about it somewhere? That makes sense. They would want to have like a different intermediate representation that retains some of the like higher level program information that would get lost in the lowering, so they can do more C++ optimizations, I guess. Let's see. Oh my goodness, I am so far behind. Paul says, can't wait till Zig is usable on Serenity. I thought it was ported to Serenity already. I'm pretty sure that somebody did. I'm just wondering if that person is here in the chat. I don't know if that port ever went into the tree or what the state of it is, but I know I've seen some indication of Zig on Serenity, or Zig for Serenity at least. Krister says office hours could be split into 1 hour Q&A and once your coding session. Yeah, I guess it could. Well, as you've probably noticed if you follow the channel, I like experimenting with the format. I've been having guests on here the past couple of weeks. Now it's just me again, but we are trying the new streaming software here. So throwing in an experiment with a little bit of programming could definitely be something that we can do. But I don't think I would want it to replace coding videos, as I was saying. It would just be, I guess, complement. Ryan Chandler says, as a Brit, I was certainly surprised to hear the word ladybird from a non-British English speaker. Yes, I did not. I admit I didn't know the word ladybird until I started looking for ladybug related words or ladybug like words, and then I found ladybird. It was just I don't know how I found it. I guess I was just Wikipediaing around or something like that. Or I think actually what I did was I Googled something like ladybird in all languages, and then I just looked at all the different words, thinking ladybug in all languages. I mean, because I thought, maybe Russian has a really nice word for ladybug, or Indonesian, or anybody, but turns out the British one was really nice. In Alone says, as a Brit, I always forget people call them ladybugs instead of ladybirds. Ladybirds. Aha. Yes. American and British English are, it's so curious to me how they differ in such strange little ways sometimes. And I read somewhere that like American English is actually kind of similar to the way that British English used to be, but then they sort of separated, and British English evolved into what it is today. I don't know if that's true. I'd read it somewhere on the internet. It might not be true at all. But I'm happy we have both, because that means that we get more words that we can use for web browsers. Let's see. In Alone says, really interesting to see you go from I'm most comfortable with expressing myself in C++ to seemingly being super comfortable with Yacht. Fun to see. Yes, that has definitely been interesting. I think it's been a while since I learned new languages. So this whole journey that ended up with Yacht was kind of transformative for me, because I forced myself to learn new languages for the first time in a long time, something that I've been kind of neglecting, perhaps foolishly. And it really feels like I've grown technically from exposing myself to new things. And now, to be honest with you, I find that when I'm writing C++, or looking at C++, I find myself frustrated that I don't have the match keyword. It's such a good feature. Match is such a good feature, and pattern matching in general. And the fact that it's missing in C++ is so frustrating now that I got used to using it in Rust and Yak and Swift and all of these different languages. And I have seen that there's a proposal to add pattern matching to C++, but I don't know what the current state of it is. Let's see. German WTB says, I always assumed verify behaved much like assert, i.e. it only applies for debug builds and is completely removed for release builds. Zig, for example, leans heavily on those things as far as I know. So verify it's specifically not called assert because we want you to not think it's the same as assert. Verify is meant to be built into release builds as well. It's essentially like it's almost like a security feature that if the program goes into an unexpected state, we don't want it to continue, and continuing would have unexpected outcomes. So we want them to be to be kept at runtime in release builds. The thing that happened was we originally had assert, and then we used assert in tons of places to guard against security issues. So we would like assert that insecure thing can't happen, but then we were just always building it with assertions on. But then at some point, people were asking like, "Oh, I just assumed that assertions will be compiled out in release," and that was not. It was not really the idea. At least it wasn't the way that we had been using assert consistently. So what I ended up doing was I just renamed it to verify and said, okay, so verify is not assert. So assert can be assert. And then if we want to relax some of these verify statements that we have, then we can do that. And we can have a new assert thing that's compiled out in release. But the intention with verify is that it's always built in. Now, I actually just noticed earlier today that because I did a release build for the first time on Linux, and I noticed that verify was not working right. So I do have a patch locally that makes verify work correctly in release builds. But that's basically the backstory and the intention. And then, of course, somebody already answered this. So Andrew said, verify was renamed from assert precisely to make it obvious that they don't get removed in release mode. So yeah, I just basically just sat here and said what Andrew said in a much longer way. Thank you, Andrew, for being a walking encyclopedia on all kinds of important things. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. So Ryder Hitchhike says, in reference to Zig, it was ported to Serenity, but the front fell off on that. Indeed. Jun says, hello from China. Really great work you do with Serenity OS. Just saw your video from a link at Mastodon yesterday, and now catching you doing a live streaming. It's like meeting my tech idol. Well, hello, Jun. Nice to see you here. Apparently, you just got to know Serenity OS yesterday. Yes, welcome to the project. We've been working on this for a couple of years now, and it's always nice when new people find us. I sometimes start to think that probably everyone who would care about Serenity knows about it at this point, but new people keep finding it, and that's fantastic. So I'm really glad to have you here. Let's see. Soul says, thanks for porting the Serenity browser to Linux. With some further maturity, it has the potential to be a great option for millions of users. Maybe someday, maybe. I think we're far from that point, obviously, in terms of maturity. And there's a long way to go on features and performance, stability, all kinds of stuff. Not to mention the fact that we are bringing up a memory safe language that we would want to investigate how to make use of that in the browser to make the browser safe as well. There's a long road ahead, but as I keep finding myself saying to people, it's a lot of work, but none of it is magic, and we can totally do it. It's just one step at a time, and we're gonna make it. And it is nice to see it on Linux. I'll say that much. And I always want to make sure that I mention that I'm not the only person who did the port to Linux. Most of the dirty work behind the Linux port was actually Dex. I just made a GUI shell and dragged us into the desktop environment where we were previously a command line utility. Let's see. Thomas says the key combo is Control X, Control A, Control V. Oh, right. So wait, can I do that here? Let's see if that works though. So we're gonna sequence. Can I Control X, Control A, Control V? Control V doesn't work. Well, more bugs found. File manager inline rename has really regressed in many different ways. Seems like we need to do something about that. Let's see. Adler says, I don't see destructuring assignment as a language feature in Yak's repo README. Is this something you think would improve the language? Yes, absolutely. We should absolutely have destructuring assignment. I love destructuring assignment. And I think the way that we use tuples at the moment in Yak is cumbersome because you have to like explicitly, you can just store the tuple into a local and then you like .0, .1, .2. It would be so much nicer if you could just do a destructuring assignment to bind those to proper names instead. So I think it's not in the README, but it's something that we should do. Desert Fish says, what's the reason that Zig is not fit for your requirements as a language? It is not memory safe. Let's see. Paul Liu says, I thought the PR was still open. The PR was held because of some stage-related changes that would break a lot of stuff. I have the PR somewhere in my bookmarks. So I don't know what that was in reference to. Maybe the Zig port. Yeah, I don't know what happened to it, but Ryder Hitchhike does, because they say that the main issue with Zig on Serenity is that Zig needs an LLVM with Serenity patches, and there's no way to keep Serenity support on Zig mainline without introducing an ugly Zig Serenity build macro. That plus some POSIX-related woes. So it sounds like there's just a bunch of work that needs to be done in some areas. Let's see. Shamtown says, would you like us to repost questions if we think you missed them, or should we accept it with grace? So I am not super great at catching every question. So if I miss something that seems perfectly reasonable, then feel free to ask it again. I do my best, but I do miss things. I don't know exactly how to solve that. It's essentially just my brain blanks out on some of the questions. So I'm sorry about that. So please feel free to ask again. I really don't mind. If you keep asking something again and again that is like unpleasant or something like that, then I will tell you. Or if it's really unpleasant, I will block you from the channel. But it depends on what kind of question it is. But for normal questions, just ask again. Don't worry. Instance Sarcasm IO says, if someone offer you 1/10/20 million dollars for all Serenity sources and rights, would you accept the offer? I would just say you can just go download them from our Git repository. It has a permissive license, so just do what you want with it. You don't need to give me anything. Let's see. DJ Wisdom says, "Hi Andreas, were you expecting such a feedback to Ladybird from the community?" Not really. I just wanted to make a little proof of concept browser that I could use on Linux, and it seems to have struck a nerve. I think there are many reasons why people got really excited about it. One is that it is a sad fact that we are living with like the selection of browsers that's available to us. They're all like these $1 billion projects that are essentially controlled by $1 billion corporations or funded by, and they all have there's a lot of like weird connections to ads and like personal information gathering, stuff like that, tracking. I think people generally feel like browsers are sort of a necessary evil, or like dealing with the companies that provide the browsers is a little bit of an unnecessary evil. So I think if somebody comes along and says, look, I'm just trying to make a browser here and it's not related to any of those things, then that seems really interesting, because maybe in some future we don't have to deal with that. Who knows? But I was surprised with just how excited some people got, because obviously we're not making any promises about the future or anything like that. We just are just doing something for fun. But it was interesting to see just how excited people got about the idea of a browser that has nothing to do with all those big companies. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. So Sophia says, if you need another fun word for ladybugs, I suggest the Saxon Motschekiebchen. All right. Where is that? Motschekiebchen or Kiebchen? Kiebchen. That is a word, definitely. Let's see. Firefox 317 says, regarding British English versus American English, I always struggle to choose between initialize and initialize when writing commit messages for Serenity OS. So in commit messages, if you are British, then nobody's going to be upset at you for writing in your native English. The one thing is in Serenity that user-facing text is American English, and I guess in our coding style also. But like in commit messages, I think it's fine to write in your natural language, just to we don't want to stamp out that part of our British community members. Let's see. Jun says, I'm not English speaker either, and I thought Ladybird was some kind of bird. Just looked up and found it's a worm. That indeed sounds like a non-native English speaker thing. So a ladybug is indeed a bug, but it's not technically not a worm, I think, but an insect. Who knows? Luke says, there's also a stage 1 proposal open to add pattern matching to JavaScript. Is there? That is fantastic. I really like pattern matching, as I already gushed about. I think that would be a great addition to JavaScript. Let's see. Shantanu says, would it make sense to have a verify release versus verify debug for the future? The debug gets compiled out, release stays in release builds. No, what makes sense is to have verify, which is always on, and assert, which has the traditional only in debug behavior. That is the whole point of verify, is to always be on. So there is no such thing as verify debug. In Alone says, I think I found Serenity in around January last year after just searching OS development on YouTube. Very glad I got in when I did. I've seen the project explode in so many ways. Explode in a good way. Yes, we definitely did explode in a good way. I think, man, January last year, it was a different time. Like if you think back, what were we doing in January last year? We didn't even have the Discord server yet. It was before I started streaming, I think. So I hadn't done any of these yet. And yeah, we were still on IRC. And the community was so much smaller. It's been real rapid escalation in the last year, or explosion, if you will. Indeed. Dun, dun, dun. German WTB says, you mentioned on Discord at some point that you're not ready for a Yak logo just now. So, Yak logo contest when? Who knows? I guess when it feels like something that we want to stick to doing and somebody presents a good logo proposal, then we can do that. But I don't know. Something that I noticed with Serenity was that like we just sort of started using random artwork that people made early on, and it just spread everywhere. And it wasn't necessarily the right style of artwork. It was just something that existed, and it was just fun. So it just like spread. And I would like to be perhaps a bit more, I don't know, like a bit more deliberate with a logo for the language if we end up on the path of the language, I guess, if that makes sense. Jun says, I'm such a non-tech guy that I barely know a thing about programming, let alone OS development. But sure, I shall keep an eye on Serenity OS. I hope it someday runs on bare metal. You can actually already run it on some machines. If you come to our Discord server, there is a bare metal channel where people talk about getting it working on their bare metal environments. Let's see. Mehdi says, what it actually means by safe language. So safe in this case means memory safe. We want a language that does not permit use after free bugs and buffer overflow bugs, basically. So we want temporal and spatial safety, and C++ is not temporally or spatially safe. So that's why we want to find an option that is. And as it turns out, or like everybody knows this, but like most of the exploitable security bugs in software today tend to be from memory safety issues. And we want to not have those types of issues to like avoid having this entire class of bugs affect our project. So doing that at a language level seems very reasonable, and that's something that we're trying to pursue. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. Woody Monk says, tried writing some image decoding in C++ after writing in Go for 5 years almost exclusively. I really noticed that I am addicted to multiple return values. Do you mean like tuples? Because tuples are nice. And at least in Serenity, we have a tuple class. I think in STL, there's a stud tuple, but I haven't actually used it myself. Or maybe you mean something else, but I like the way tuples work in Rust, at least, and we're definitely bringing that to Yak as well. We just need the destructuring assignment, as we talked about earlier, to make the feature really ergonomic. Johan Nilsson says, how did you come up with the name Yacht? So it was actually suggested by JT, who is the co-creator of the language. And I just said, yeah, sure, let's call it that. And then I also, we talked about the Swedish meaning of the word. And that's where it came from. Bfreddle says, how is the state of C interop in Yacht? Will it be possible to use Yacht libraries from C and internal langs which can import C like Zig? Yes, it transpiles to C++, and we're probably, it wouldn't be a very big effort to allow you to export something that has like a C linkage, right? Or like has a non-C++ mangled name. That would not be very difficult to support that. So I would say the state of C interop is already today. You can bring in like extern C functions and call them from Yacht. You can also bring in extern C++ functions and call them from Yacht. The other way around is if you know the name of the Yacht function, you can call it, but it's a little bit rickety. It's not, the naming scheme is probably going to change in one way or another, but it's definitely something that we want to work well at least C++ interop. Like we definitely need C++ to be able to call Yacht because we want to be able to use it incrementally in the Serenity project. So we need to be able to port one component at a time. Okay, let's see. Inalone says, January 2021 was firmly Cartalk / no Discord era Serenity. Yes, that's exactly what it was. It was Cartalk era. I haven't done Cartalk in so long because I guess office hours really like replaced Cartalk. And I think, at least I feel like office hours is better than Cartalk was, even though Cartalk had some nice things about it. Like, I could just talk at length about something. The interactive nature of office hours is, at least to me, very appealing because I really enjoy talking with everybody and like getting instant feedback and being able to, read and react what happens with the audience. Let's see. Winnie says, I've read a couple of times that Serenity is slower than operating systems in general. A recent example that comes to mind is the operating system taking 14 hours to build itself. Why do you think that is? So there are two main issues with performance, which really mess up the self build, which is, the first one is that we don't parallelize. So the multi-core kernel support is unstable. It exists, it works, but it's a bit unstable, so you can't survive a whole build, so we don't use it. If we could schedule compile jobs on all cores, it would take a lot less time, of course. And the second big issue is we have a very inefficient disk cache, which frequently stalls as we wait for the cache to flush everything to disk. And it's just really sloppy and needs to be re-architected in order to go fast. But nobody has worked on it yet. If somebody wants to work on building a better disk cache or stabilizing multi-core, they are free to do that. But in this project, people just work on the thing that they are interested in at the moment. So that sometimes means that things take time before they happen. So, and then, outside of those two issues, I'm sure that there are many, many other ways we can improve performance as well, but those two are the main performance killers that we know about at the moment. Yeah. So, and I think even if you were to go multi-core, you would still stall on the disk cache very frequently. But I don't know if Tim is here, who's worked on self-hosted build. Maybe he has more up-to-date information about the state. Let's see. Rick Nam says, did you build your office, or was that tiny room already there when you moved in? I'm interested in separating work life without sacrificing too much space. So this room has always been here, but it's actually a walk-in closet, I guess. So when we moved in here, it was just, like a place to hang your clothes. But I just kind of took out the clothes and put in a desk instead. And it's ended up being a very nice solution because there are no distractions in here. I can focus very, very hard, and it allows my wife to exist in our home without having to walk in the background and stuff like that. So turned out pretty good, but no, didn't build it. It just took a closet and crammed myself in there. Let's see. Inalone says, I like the focus of car talk, but I do overall prefer the interaction of office hours, even if I don't always interact / don't have the time to watch live. Yes. I think both of them obviously have merits, and both I miss making the car talks. Actually, fun fact, I have not had my driver's license for 2 months now. I think a bit more than 2 months. So I haven't even I haven't driven anywhere because my license expired. I had this 10-year license, and it expired 2 months ago, and I gave it to the Swedish government to get a replacement. And I think just in the next couple of days, I'm finally going to get the replacement. They just took forever to process my replacement application, which was a little bit tedious. But I'll be actually out driving in the car soon, so maybe we can record something. Let's see. Adler says, if you keep coming up with such good ideas like Yak and Ladybird, SerenityOS will soon be the Serenity ecosystem. Things will definitely escape Serenity to go be awesome elsewhere. Well, I think I don't mind things escaping the Serenity ecosystem as long as it's done tastefully, I guess. And that's kind of what I would like Ladybird to become, is something that sort of tastefully takes a part of Serenity and just makes it work on other platforms, but is still very much based on Serenity, and sort of feeds back into Serenity, so that if somebody improves the Ladybird, then very likely they're also improving Serenity in some way. And obviously there's the cute the GUI layer is independent of Serenity just by necessity, but I think we should look for ways to share as much code as possible with Serenity, so that if somebody wants to improve Ladybird, then even if they don't realize it, they're also improving Serenity. I think that would be really nice. But we'll see. German WTB says, have you ever encountered passing C++ object from / into dynamically loaded objects? Is that a technique you like? Do you think that kind of modularity even makes sense in a mono repo project? So I think there's it's tricky sometimes to deal with passing stuff at runtime linked libraries, like passing something across a boundary like that, because C++ has notoriously flimsy ABI, and just passing C structs tends to be what people choose to do, just because it's kind of more reliable and simple. But in an environment that we control ourselves, I am not at all against using C++ across a dynamic linking boundary. But in terms of like modularity, I guess it depends on what you want to modularize. So that would have to be, we have to look at the specific thing that you want to modularize and see if that makes sense. Oh, the chat scroll escaped from me. Winnie says, do you think that the use of generally object-oriented design with a lot of dynamically dispatched function is a potential reason for slow performance? No, I don't think so at all. That has never been measured to cause slow performance in our system, at least. And I think it's a little bit of a meme that that like an object-oriented UI would be like so slow that you would ever notice. There's a case for like what they call data-oriented programming, and it's when you're dealing with a lot of data, right? But the idea that you need to restructure your program to avoid object orientation so that your 10 buttons and 2 list views can somehow be more efficiently laid out in memory. That's a little bit of a meme, I would say. But of course, I guess what I said could be considered a little bit of a straw man in this case. But I don't have another man to talk to. Let's see. Tim says, no real updates regarding self-hosting at the moment, as I'm currently working on getting some stuff upstreamed, like the QEMU port, etc. Cool. However, booting the system has revealed that we are probably much more in need of optimizing QEMU, as that happens every boot instead of just once. Oh. That's interesting. Optimizing QEMU. Tim says that he would rather take the 14-hour build time once than waiting 1 hour every time I try to boot the system. Yeah, 1 hour to boot, that's pretty crazy. I think we can definitely do better. Ooh, a super chat, I think, from Matas, but I can't see if there is a message. Dang it, how can I see that? I'm gonna try to open it on YouTube. This might be disastrous. Wait. Oh, there was no message. Okay. Well, thank you very much for the super chat, Matas. I really appreciate that. Yeah, so StreamYard shows me the super chats, but it's like they look different than they do on YouTube. So I don't know exactly if any information was missing. Andrew says, libGPU uses DLOpen for GPU backends. Yeah, there you go. So we're already doing something like that. And I think that's perfectly reasonable. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. TTRSS says, hi, how are you doing? Well, TTRSS, I am doing great. How are you? I hope you're doing great. If not, let's talk about it. Let's see. Didos says UI makes sense to be object oriented. Yes, that I think so too. And I think there's a lot of measurable gains from like non-object oriented design that you can achieve, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have object orientation for expressing things that are very clearly best expressed with objects. I think there's such a baby bathwater thing going on right now, where some languages even like outright reject object-oriented principles because they say like, oh, it's outdated and we're just not going to support it. And I think that they're just kind of they're making everybody's life harder for some weird principle reason. It feels very ivory tower to me. But I don't know. Maybe I'm more of a practical programmer, and I don't care about the sort of the academic merits of a programming language design nearly as much as I care about like being able to use it for the things I want to use it for. Anyway, let's see. Anthony Cousins says, what are your thoughts on things like Swift UI and React for UI? So I have to say I have not used either of them very much at all beyond looking at some introductory examples. I think the idea of UI automatically updating to reflect state changes in a program is interesting. But I don't know if I would want to write code that way. It seems, at least it hasn't seemed to me to be a big problem in the GUI programs that we have so far. Like, I don't know if they would be better in a reactive style, but that might be because I don't have sufficient experience with reactive style programming. Maybe that's something I need to expose myself to a little bit more. But I do think that it's neat, it's nifty, and they make for like cool examples. So I would like to learn more about those patterns, I guess. Winnie says, you're like the exact opposite of someone like Jonathan Blow. Not sure if you've watched his videos or streams, but it's almost funny how yin-yang-ish you two are. Yes, I have watched John Blow. I'm familiar with his work and a fan of his games. I don't necessarily agree with him on everything about programming, but I think he has some good ideas. But I think John and many other people like John, I guess they become a bit more dogmatic about their ideas. And I noticed this in games in general, that like somebody discovers a programming pattern that's useful in one situation, and for whatever reason, they start to extrapolate and say, oh, this pattern is great, it must be used everywhere. And that just doesn't seem sound to me. It seems like programming is much more nuanced than that, and there are different patterns that are useful in different situations. And maybe the thing I feel the most strongly about is that it's absolutely okay to sacrifice irrelevant performance for developer convenience in many cases. So, you know, the 80-20 rule applies typically so that like most of your program has totally irrelevant performance characteristics, and it doesn't matter if something takes 1 or 2 milliseconds in most parts of your program. There are like a couple of performance critical parts of any software, and you should absolutely optimize those. But there's so much code where performance doesn't matter, and I think we should allow ourselves to have convenience when writing that code, and like not obsessing about performance and performance best practices when writing code where performance doesn't matter in the first place, I guess. And I know that some people feel very differently about that, but I think there's something like, it's really nice to write programs that are easy and fun to write and express yourself in a high level way and not worry about performance when you know that it's irrelevant anyway. I don't know. I feel like I'm not articulating this as well as I would like. I need to think a bit more about it. But this isn't to say that I have any kind of problem with John or the people who are into data-oriented design. It's just, I think that it's a tool that is great in some context. But there are so many contexts that we need many different types of tools, and we should strive to build a kit of tools so that we have something that's good in every situation, rather than trying to find sort of the super tool that works on everything. That's my feeling. Landkeeper has become a YouTube member. Thank you, Landkeeper. Enjoy the golden yak that now shows up next to your username. And you can also use emotes. We have a bunch of fancy emotes. Yotku says, and you don't want to spend hours optimizing code that you're just going to get rid of by happenstance in the near future. Right. That's also a thing. Like, prototypes don't need to be fast. You know, I mean, unless the purpose of the prototype is specifically to make something faster or whatever. Most prototypes don't need to be fast, but you need to be able to make them fast. And there tends to be a much greater value in being able to prototype something quickly than there is in having the prototype run quickly. In the general case, I would say. So when we're looking at Yacht, for example, we're trying to make a language that's really, really easy to write. So you can very quickly prototype stuff. And then we want the optimization pass to be so that you're able to iterate on that same code without necessarily having to rewrite it, but you can take that code that you wrote and then like make it better by optimizing what you've done. But that initial prototyping pass, we want that to be really fast and easy, not get in your way, not force you to think about like cumbersome data layouts and things like that. Anyway, Anthony says, I think the similar thing with Jay Blow and Andreas is they focus a lot on actually making things /results driven. Right. Yes, I think so too. I think John is clearly very productive. I definitely respect what he's doing. And I have watched many of his talks, so I can hear his voice in my head. I would just make certain technical decisions differently. And that's perfectly fine. Like, we need different approaches to things. It's good to have different approaches to things. Let's see. George says, hi, Andreas. What's your opinion on Golang? Is this worth learning in 2022? I'm trying to find an alternative for C to write smaller / simpler apps faster. Right. I think it's probably worth learning. I say that as somebody who doesn't know Golang, but in general, if you're interested in learning something new, then just ride the wave of that interest and go learn the new thing. Like, don't hold yourself back from learning something that you're interested in. If you're interested in something, it's probably worth learning. Let's say that much. Yeah. So as Lilac says, so what you're saying is you want to make it fast and then make it fast. That is exactly what I am saying. Yes, I want to make it fast. And then I want to make it fast. I think, yes. That's very well condensed, actually, as Lilac. Shantanu says, does Yak live only on SerenityOS, or is there a Linux bundle / package as well? You can build it on Windows, Mac, and Linux at the moment. Those are the 3 systems that we are testing on the continuous integration with GitHub Actions. So it's already very, very portable, both the language and the runtime. Sponimir says, if you're in bed at 2 a.m. and get some interesting idea or find solution for a hard problem, will you wait for the next day or go code it? I will wait for the next day. If I am in bed, I'm not getting up. 99% of the time, I'm not getting up. If it's like just that like 5 times in a lifetime idea that you occasionally get, I might get up. But usually when I commit to going to bed, I'm committed. Even just yesterday, I had an epiphany while going to sleep about how I'm going to solve some irritating problem in CSS Flexbox layout. And I thought, I hope I remember this tomorrow morning. And I did. So, but I didn't get up. Let's see. Manukar says, hi, Andreas. Besides the Serenity port, do you have any experience on Doom hacking? Like, are you familiar with the WAD format or any source port? I am not familiar with Doom hacking outside of the port that we did for Serenity. I'm familiar with Doom playing. I've played a lot of Doom, different WADs, and I've played on many different source ports, but I never tried to hack on them personally. All right, let's see. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, wow. I got to the bottom of the questions. This doesn't happen very often. But I probably missed something. I mean, I probably missed a lot of things, and I am sorry about that. But here we are. Nikolai says, hello. Hello indeed. Now it feels like I'm actually live because I'm at the bottom of the questions. So Nuga says, what happens when you get to the bottom of the questions? I don't know. Now we have to find that out. I guess since we got to the bottom of the questions, I'm going to show you something that that Linus did just yesterday. So let me actually go ahead and share. I have to make a feature request to StreamYard to be able to swap between shared windows. Linus wrote a post yesterday called Trying Real Websites in the SerenityOS browser. And I will link that here. And basically in this post, he goes through a bunch of like big public websites and shows them side by side what they look like in Firefox versus our browser on Serenity. And it's like a lot of broken layouts and stuff, but it is cool that they all load. And it really looks like they get through the majority of their JavaScript setup. This was definitely not the case in the past. Like sites would just load and then would be white because they had like 5,000 JavaScript errors. And the fact that so many websites, they now load to the point where it's just a bunch of layout errors, I think this is fantastic. So like what I see here is just a huge list of layout to-dos. Like we need to fix a ton of different issues, but I guess when we didn't have the browser, and the way I was thinking initially about sort of what it would be like to make a browser and get it to the point where it can display modern websites, I used to imagine that like we would get to this point where we can do all the layout just fine, but then JavaScript would take forever to get working. But it's sort of, in reality, it worked out the other way around, that our JavaScript engine became strong enough that it can run the sort of setup JavaScript on, I don't know, I don't want to estimate a percentage, but like many big websites. And we just have a whole bunch of CSS issues instead. So I totally misjudged how that was going to work out. And I don't know, there's just something about this post that gets me so hyped up, and I just want to go work on CSS layout. Anyway, if anybody wants to investigate CSS issues, there's a great set of pages to start looking at. Let's see. Andrew says, would you rather fight 100 Buffy-sized Buffyaks or one Buffyak-sized Buffy? Andrew, I don't know. Probably 100 Buffy-sized Buffyaks. Nicholas says, what are your opinions on GitHub Copilot and the Free Software Foundation leaving GitHub because of it? No opinion. Sohi or Soul. The L versus I is a little bit hard to see on my screen. Soul says, this is a great post. It shows how much work is needed, but also some things to work on. Indeed. Indeed. Winnie says, do you think that Rust's aggressive compile time memory safety with the borrow checker and lifetime manager is a good or bad thing? I find it annoying how most of my development of any complex Rust app is fighting against the compiler, although that's just me. So I think it's a fantastic invention. The borrow checker technique is a great invention. It is also cumbersome and kind of unpleasant to use, and it makes working with Rust less fun than working without a borrow checker. And for that reason, I don't want to replicate or use the same technique in Yukt. Instead, I kind of just want to make something that's really pleasant to use, and I'm okay with sacrificing that additional performance that you can get from borrow checking in order to get a more pleasant developer experience. But I think the borrow checking is a great invention, and I'm really glad that it exists. I don't actually know if it's completely original work or if it's based on previous work. I'm sure that some language people can fill in the details, but I think probably 10 years from now, it will have evolved to the point where somebody figured out a way to make it a lot less cumbersome to use, and maybe then it will be absolutely awesome. But I think the way it is today, it reminds me a bit of this feeling of writing C when you can use C++ instead. Like it's you have to do all of this extra work that's outside of what you're actually trying to do, and you're just like fidgeting with all these details, and that takes away from the fun of programming for me. So that's why I don't want to replicate it or use it in Yukt. But I'm watching with curiosity to see what they do next. In the meantime, for Yukt, we're going to focus on building something that is really pleasant to use for the developer, and we're not gonna be shy about giving up a little bit of irrelevant performance or for a lot of developer convenience. Basilis L says, hi, Andreas. I just wanted to say thank you. You keep me company those past days. My parents made me leave the house because they found out about my sexuality. Just thanks for keeping me company. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Basilis. I hope things will work out somehow. Just keep your head up. Miguel says, hi, Andreas. Andrew Kelly once mentioned that a lot of his work in Zig was implementing proof of concepts and unblocking other people. Do you find yourself in a similar position? I was saying similar because of Zig. sometimes I guess, yes, I do find myself in that position. I didn't think about it in exactly those terms, um, but yes, I do like the idea um, of unblocking other people. Like that's one of the most satisfying things you can do is unblock somebody else. And um, I think in my case, I do spend substantial time not just on proof of concepts, but also like on just grinding out more and more day-to-day code. But in general, I think this is sort of a healthy representation or healthy description of what a good technical leader can be, right? I think Andrew is a good technical leader, and I aspire to be like Andy in some ways. Let's see. Winnie says, it's funny to me how the whole point of the borrow checker is to remove needless runtime costs, but everyone ends up wrapping everything in ref counts to circumvent the compiler. I don't think everybody does. I mean, there's clearly a lot of people who are taking the time to work with the borrow checker and make really like good performing code within the rules of the language, and that's cool. It's just to each their own, I guess. But I'm really glad that it exists. I'm glad that people are pushing the envelope on what we can express and what we can do with compilers and the kind of static analysis we can do. I just want it to become more convenient before I commit to using it myself. Let's see. As Lilac says, who do you think would be fun to have as a future guest on Office Hours? Ooh, I don't know. But we're definitely going to have more people. I think in general, like having a guest on Office Hours or having multiple guests like we had 2 weeks ago, it's something that scares me a little bit because of the unpredictability of it, and it's kind of volatile and you don't know what's going to happen. And because it scares me a little bit, I want to get better at it. So I'm just going to have to practice. And I really appreciate that you come here and help me practice in front of an audience. But I'm going to try to make sure that it's somehow interesting. And Xiz said that I loved your office hours with JT. Thank you. I also thought that went pretty well. Chilaka says, what is the advice that you would give for a developer with 4 years of experience who wants to become as capable as I am? I guess write a lot of code and try to participate in open source development of some kind. Open source development is really where I picked up most of my fundamental skills that I rely on today. Like just my general ability to enter a new project and figure out how things work, my general ability to communicate with others about code, all of those things originated in my work on open source and like digging into that. So my big recommendation to anybody who wants to improve radically is to participate in open source development. And like by that I don't mean like putting your own code on GitHub and hoping somebody notices, but like actually joining existing projects and fixing bugs and working together with people to sharpen your skills. Let's see. Abhishek says, hey Andreas, hope you're doing good. I am, thank you. Do you have any tips with keeping track of things like editing multiple files? I don't know if I have any great tips for editing multiple files. I guess just try to use a split view, maybe. Sometimes I don't use a split view, and then I always feel stupid when I realized that I'm not doing it. And wait, I want to share my something, maybe my VS Code here. Share screen window. Okay, so if I have something like this, and then I want to edit some other file at the same time, then if I'm not thinking about what I'm doing, then maybe I'll just like use these tabs and jump back and forth. But really what I should be doing is splitting the view and then like having two up at the same time, because it's just so much nicer to have the context there for your sort of peripheral vision to stay connected to. So I guess that is my one recommendation for editing multiple files. Oh, when I minimize the window, then it disappears. How very strange. Okay. Yuval says, is there another developer interview planned? I really enjoy the previous ones. Well, there is no plan, if you can believe it, but I have a couple of people that I've asked to do an interview with, and we're trying to schedule something. So I'll just say that much at this point and then hope that it becomes something. Armo says, JT is always a lot of fun and he has a great smile. Well, I will forward that information to JT. Nick says, I think if anything, Rust's borrow checker shows people how hard memory safety is to get right. The abstractions are a band-aid till you learn to write code that doesn't need them, I think. I mean, right. So the borrow checking paradigm sort of forces you into a specific programming style that is safe, or like provably safe, right? Statically provably safe. But there are many things that are technically safe, but it's hard to prove them to the compiler, or nobody's come up with a good way to prove them to the compiler yet. And maybe I'm just holding out for those type of things. I don't know exactly, but I think it's not that borrow checker safety is the only type of safety. It's just a subset of safe operations that people have figured out how to actually communicate to the compiler in a good and structured way. But I do think that that set of safety descriptions are going to grow in the future, and it's going to become more sophisticated and be able to describe more things that are safe, which I look forward to. Alex Vitkov says, I think your lines are a bit long to use split view. Yeah, well, usually I don't have that high of a resolution when I mean, I don't have that big, huge fonts when I'm just editing by myself. I'm using a much smaller font, but here when I stream, I usually tweak up the font sizes quite a bit. Let's see. TTRSS says university software engineering or university computer science. I have no idea. I don't know the difference, and I haven't been to university, so I couldn't tell you. But just choose whatever seems more interesting, I guess. Manuker says, I guess Jack will have some kind of language spec. I think it's important besides the current compiler implementation. Saying this knowing it's a on-the-work language. Right, yes. It will probably have a language specification in the end. There's already a pull request I've seen about defining or like writing out a dedicated grammar for reference, even though it's like not used to generate the parser, but it's still good to have a descriptive grammar on the side. And we're probably going to spec the language eventually if we end up sticking with it. Smiley Coyote says, does the P word also start with a P in your native language? Yes, indeed. Undisputed Goose says, when you were a kid/teen, what dream project you want to work on but not capable of doing it? Well, you're going to like the answer. I really, really wanted to build an operating system. And now that's what I'm doing with friends from around the world, and it's awesome. It's everything I dreamed it would be as a kid, and I couldn't be happier with what I'm doing with my life, and with all the friends I've made working on this, all the friends here on YouTube, all the friends on Discord and GitHub, and everybody who just has joined up to hack on this stuff together. I'm super grateful. It's just the best. And with that, let's end the stream. So thank you all for coming. Thank you for the super chats and for the folks who joined the YouTube members thingy. Thanks for all the questions. And I hope everybody is going to have a good weekend. If you end up working on Serenity or any Serenity related stuff this weekend, do come by our Discord server and show us what you're working on. It's always more fun to do programming if you do it with your friends. And we would be happy to look at your screenshots and talk about anything. See you all next time. Bye.